Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Rich has giant nostrils. Anybody? How do we feel about that? Do we feel as though the Wiz has giant nostrils? Has anybody taken any notice of that?
Comment.
No comment?
No comment.
And we
I
can
respect Rich.
Well, I respect him too. That doesn't just.
I'm not offended by that. I'm not offended by that.
Well, yeah, like I'm on here all the time saying I got a giant melon, which is an actual fact. It's like it's not something I can hide. I walk around and I'm like, my head is grossly oversized, and it's
maybe your body's just undersized.
Nah, well, compared to pretty much most heads in the world, it's grossly oversized. But the thing of it, the beauty of it is coming towards you, it looks normal. It's when I'm walking away from you. So most people don't turn to look. But if you did, you'd be like, yeah, it'd be horrible. All right. So everybody turn their cameras off because this is an audio podcast and we really have no need or desire to look at you. So this is Lionel, the evil overlord, and I'll introduce everybody because I think we could call this Great Layouts We've Visited. Great Layouts I Have Visited Part 2. Part 2. So it's me, Lionel, the evil overlord, and then we have Tom Schmieder, who is currently constructing a ginormous layout in the basement of his home in Longwood, New Jersey. And what's the layout, Tom? Give us a 30-second capsulization of what the layout is.
It's actually in Long Valley, New Jersey.
Oh, what did I say? Long Beach, California?
He said something else. It's Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western in the 1950s in Western New Jersey.
Perfect. And what's the overall size of it?
The room is 23 by 50.
With about, 18 layers on it or something?
It's got a few layers. 4 or 5, depending on where you're standing.
And then we have Doug Watts, who does not have a gigantic layout. Actually, Tom, I think you're the guy with the layout here. You're the layout guy. We have Doug
Currently
Watts.
So, yes.
Yeah, we have Doug Watts.
Ralph's got a layout.
Oh, yeah, right. We haven't got to him yet, though.
Oh, yeah,
We don't care about him.
Yeah, we don't care about him. Then we have Doug Watts. Doug, you and I first met. I think we actually first met on the Onondaga Cutoff. I don't think we ever exchanged words that evening.
Yeah, I believe we met during one of the remote operating sessions.
That's correct. That's exactly right. That was our first meeting with each other, and then probably the first time we met in person was at the Station Inn in Crescent, Pennsylvania.
Correct.
That's stationinpa.com. Is that correct? Is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
Yeah, stationinpa.com. I mean, somebody check to make sure that's correct, Rich. Because we want to get that right, because that's our buddy Alex Lang, and we want to give him a plug.
That's correct.
Is that the correct URL? Anybody?
Anyone?
Yes,
Anyone?
Stationinpa.com.
Perfect. So that's
Bueller.
That's in Crescent, Pennsylvania, and it's run by our buddy Alex Lang and his wife, and it's a wonderful spot. And I've had the opportunity of staying there a couple of times. And Alex and Doug, hey Doug, I haven't talked to you since your experience at Springfield.
Yeah, that's right.
How did that go? You and I barely exchanged 2 words on that weekend, I think.
Yeah, well, there was a lot going on because I was splitting my time between the Station Inn table and then the table with home shops over in the Young building. So basically I had my rollerblades on and was going back and forth. But it was a great experience, totally different Springfield to Amherst experience for me, because basically when I'm usually there, it's a shop-a-thon and networking, etc. But this was all about listening to people talk about things that they were interested in at the Station Inn table as well as over at Home Shop. So learned a lot, had a great time.
Would you say you prefer being inside the ropes or outside the ropes? I say if you're behind a table, that's inside the ropes. You feel
Inside's fine because I've done inside as a vendor too. So
okay, all right. Yeah. So, anyways, the first time we ever met in person was Crescent Inn. Doug, you worked for Conrail for a while.
correct.
You've had a career in prototype railroading, and part of that time was spent with Conrail.
Correct.
And every time I say that, Uncle Dave starts to drool. And then we have our buddy Ralph Heiss.
Hello.
Is that true, Ralph? Are we buddies?
Lionel, I'd like to think so.
Okay. And
It would be nice.
have you had any kind of verification about that?
Well, there are people who talk, and I got people talking in this ear, and then people talking in the other ear. But I like you, Lionel.
Okay.
I think you're an okay guy.
All right. I think you're an okay guy, Ralph.
I enjoy talking to you.
I enjoy talking to you.
Well, thank you.
Actually,
Okay, enough of that. Enough of that. Let's get to the meat of the meat and potatoes of it all.
So, what layout do you have, Ralph?
I have the Lehigh Valley layout set in the 1950s in New York Harbor.
And is it 23 by 50?
No. I think I would lose my collective mind if my layout was 23 by 50 and multi-tiered and layered and leveled and everything else.
That makes sense, Ralph.
So what size is it?
It's approximately 11 feet wide by 22 feet long.
So that's plenty. That'll keep you busy.
Oh, it's plenty.
How long you been working on it?
A very long time, easily close to 15, 20 years.
Okay. Well, pretty much everybody's working on any permanent layout. Pretty much anybody's been working on it a very long time. Now, Ralph, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You don't have to answer this immediately. You can take a breath, count to 1,001, 1,002, and then you can answer the question.
All right, halfway there.
All right. Whose phone keeps going off?
Not mine.
Okay. It's got to be Schmieder.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mine's on mute.
I hear a buzzing sound too occasionally.
I do too.
I think that's Doug.
I don't know where that's coming from.
I'm pretty sure that's from Doug.
That's good because last time I was getting blamed for it.
Were you? I love doing these podcasts because we're 8 minutes in and really have accomplished nothing. Except
It's been pretty riveting, I got to tell you.
Except we're entertaining people, whether they're jogging, walking around the block, trying to fall asleep, driving to work. We've been entertaining people for the last 8 minutes.
I'm just glad that your regular listeners, Lionel, enjoy this kind of level of, deep thinking talk,
Absolutely. It's well done. It is interesting to hear people. It's interesting to be part of people's conversations, and that's the way we do it here. There's other than the fact that, of course, we've had 3 rehearsals and a couple of table reads. So, Ralph, do you have any Rapido trains on your layout?
You're a fast track for model railroading fun.
Can somebody count out 1,001 and 1,002 for Ralph?
I did. I already stopped. I had already started counting, and then I stopped. Yes, I forgot that Rich had his line. I'm sorry.
Okay. So,
in case you didn't hear that, you're a fast track for model railroading fun.
There you go. Let's try it. Let's do it from the top. Okay.
I'm ready.
Ralph, do you have any Rapido trains?
You're a fast track for model railroading fun.
Rapido trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
I do, Lionel.
See how well that. See you. If you had come to all the rehearsals, you would have.
Well, that's true. I fall asleep on the couch, and
Exactly. All right, and finally, in our motley crew, we have none other than Rich the Wiz Wisniewski, who is become a semi-regular member of the podcast crew, is a glue that holds the whole thing together, has the answer to almost any question, and to prove it, the other day we were doing a podcast, which you may or may not have heard by now, and my dog had eaten a pen, a pen with blue ink in it, and had covered her front paws and her mouth and her face with blue ink. And I said to Rich, the whiz, how do I get that out? And of course he had an answer. Because it's the whiz.
Soap and water first, and then if that doesn't work, it was isopropyl alcohol.
Yeah. I didn't bother doing any of that. It'll wear off.
But not stain remover.
No, not stain remover. Actually, by the next day, I would say it was 50% gone. She probably licked a lot of it off. It was cute at the time. That should be the picture I use for the start of this podcast. All right.
Excuse me can I ask Tom a question real quick, Lionel?
No, I'm sorry. We're out of time.
All right then. Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask Tom if do you know what Lionel's dog's name is? It's not Stain, is it? That's a joke between Tom and I.
Ah, that's good. Now you can explain it for the other hundreds of thousands of people that are listening.
Oh, you're not going to edit that part out? Okay.
No.
It's a Johnny Cash song, isn't it, Tom?
Did Tom leave?
We lost Tom. Tom's probably on the floor right now, losing his ever-loving mind.
Tom has done something to his audio. All right. Well, it's the three of us now. We're down a man. All right. So while Tom is trying to find his audio again, the three of us can carry on. Oh, Tom's back. Tom?
Bueller.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
I think we figured out where the buzzing's coming from.
Coming from Tom.
Tommy, can you hear me?
Tommy, yeah. Anyways, he was trying to talk to you about a Johnny Cash song. Okay, so what we did in the first episode of Great Layouts that we've operated on is we basically primarily talked about Harold Worthwine's and Tony Custer's layout. Tony Custer's Midland Road, Harold Worthwine's Erie, Tony Custer's Nickel Plate, and how fortunate you guys are to be able to be regular operators on Tony Custer's layout. And do you guys ever get the sense of, let's ask each one of you, we'll start with Tom. Do you guys ever get the sense of how fortunate you are to be in that position, to be able to be regular operators on Tony Custer's layout?
It's, in my world, growing up, looking at these articles in the magazines and you read about it, it's something that you put up on a pedestal and, could only dream about as a kid experiencing something like that. And then to find out that, geez, the guy almost lives in your backyard and he's a welcoming, friendly, nice guy. You got to pinch yourself that you get an invitation there and you're become a regular operator. It was beyond my wildest dreams in model railroading to participate in something like that.
And how long have you been operating there now?
It's got to be close to 30 years.
Wow. So you were there at the Allegheny Midland years. 30.
It was at the tail end of the Allegheny Midland years when I started.
So remind us again, how did you get that invite?
I believe it was through Harold.
Okay. I think I remember
Harold
that.
Worthwine. Yeah.
And Ralph, do you have a sense of how fortunate you are to be able to operate at Tony Custer's?
Absolutely. I mean, every time. I mean, it's a great layout. He's a well-known, model railroader, but like I believe I talked about last time. It's, I do have a sense of how many people would actually love to be in my shoes, but I think about it as I'm going to a friend's house, operating his layout with my friends, and I don't put too much stock into it, but I do, like I said, I do realize that there are people who would gladly mug me and, to take my place. Yeah. Just for an hour, for 5 minutes, but
just to have the opportunity to visit.
Absolutely. I mean, it is an experience. It's like, I almost kind of feel maybe sorry for Tony because the Allegheny Midland in the, collective minds of model railroaders, I think maybe outshines the Nickel Plate, but the Nickel Plate is it's a much larger layout. It's a completely different layout, but so.
Tom, you are buzzing like crazy. You got some sort of interference going on there.
Let me try rebooting this microphone.
What was your thought there, Rich? I missed it.
Well, just thinking that perhaps somebody's cell phone is like too close to.
Yes, that can be a problem.
Yeah.
Doug, now remind me, Doug, how much opportunity have you had to operate at Tony Custer's layout?
Quite a few. I think I started operating there in 2014 or 2015. So not as long as the other gentleman, but still 2014. That's what, 10 years ago?
Yeah. So, and do you have the same sense of how fortunate you are?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's an interesting point that I've actually had a discussion with Uncle Dave about. Like, how does the world, like, it's something that I would love to have operating session weekends with the AML Nation, but I'm always like feeling like somebody's going to get left out. Whatever it is. Tom's going to get left out? No, Tom, you're still buzzing, buddy.
I just went and shut off the dehumidifier. Wondering if that was making the noise.
No. Where's your cell phone in relation to your equipment?
It's on the other side of the benchwork.
Okay.
In a charger.
There you go. That's probably okay then. I don't know what it is. There's something that you're connected to there that's making it buzz. Hopefully it won't be too terribly bad because I don't feel like starting over.
Did that go away just then?
A little bit, right? This exact second, it's not too bad.
I just turned off the fluorescent desk lamp.
That could have something to do with it.
That could definitely have something to do with it.
That's something I've that's something I've often thought of. Like, I'd love to have AML Nation operating weekends, but for sure somebody's feelings are going to get hurt. Do you guys ever give any thought to that? Because there are plenty of private operating groups throughout the country, and it's like, I don't like to talk about them specifically because I always feel like, well, I've been left out of some myself. So, I mean, I like, do you guys ever have any thoughts about, golly gee, Bob or Sam or George can't come or hasn't been invited? Like, I think it's actually a problem with model railroading. It's kind of like let me tell you about this really cool party you can't go to. Anybody?
There's a bunch of events around the country that are open invitations, such like you got Prairie Rail and Island Ops on Long Island and Rocky Ops and Sound Rail, and there are actually an abundance of opportunities to go run almost any layout in the country right now with all these different operations that you can participate in. I think most of them promoted through the OPSIG is where you see it.
Okay. OPSIG.com.
Let me verify that for you.
I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure that's what it is. OPSIG.
I think it's .org.
You're right. And you know why?
OPSIG.org.
And
Doug would know.
And Doug, do you know why it's .org?
Because it's an organization.
Because they're organized.
And so you have all these various, operating events around the country, and those are open to the public. Anybody can get on those distribution lists. You just put your name in and sign up, and the next time they have it, you'll be on their invite list. And they cover, I think, the vast majority of operating layouts around the country. There are also other, people get together and say, hey, let's do an operating thing. We had a thing going between New Jersey and the Maryland, Virginia area. We call it NJDC interchange. And it's not necessarily open to the public. It was a privately arranged event between guys in this area, New Jersey, and guys down in the Maryland, Virginia area. And not that it was intended to be exclusive to leave people out. That was never the thought. It was just, hey, we ended up coming across each other at an event, and you guys got some good layouts up there. Let's come up there and run some of your layouts. And we got some good layouts down here. Come on down and come enjoy our layouts. And there's, you look at the number of layouts that an area has, and you see how many operators you need. So then that sort of gives you an idea of the pool of people you can invite from that other region. And that's been successful. They've been doing that for a number of years now. And I know Ralph's gone on it. I've gone on it. Doug, have you gone on that one?
Yes.
And I don't know if Rich has been on that one.
Yep.
So good time. And, it's as open as you can be until you fill up, and you can only take so many people.
Yeah.
And that's really where it ends up being. You can't invite everybody. It can't be open when you have a limited number of seats.
Well, for sure.
So if I could just comment, because I'm the least senior in terms of model railroad operations of the group tonight. I only got started in this 15 years ago, something like that. What I observe is that if people see that you're a decent operator, you're going to get invited to other layouts. And you go to other layouts and you're a decent operator, and that's how you get a reputation. And that's how I assume, I was invited to go to the interchange event that Tom was just talking about, because I sort of paid my dues,
Because I live on Jupiter, or as far as the model railroading world goes, if you live north of the border, you kind of live in Jupiter. You're right, Rich. That is a good way to get up, but it's like, I bet you the percentage of model railroaders that actually get to do some serious operation, the percentage of the population that gets to do it is probably less than 10%. I bet you I had recently, somebody hosted an operating session for me that I could invite some people to. And I mean, the layout really held about 10 or 11 operators, but we ended up at about 14, and this person couldn't come because he was traveling with such and such, and it was somebody you really wanted to have. So then, we invited his friend, and this person couldn't come because he was traveling. And it's like, it's a really hard thing to manhandle, getting people into operating sessions. And it's kind of like the whole who gets invited to operating sessions can sometimes turn into be the exact opposite of what the point of model railroading is almost. It can become very exclusive. I don't know why I just find that, you guys are very fortunate to have a lot of opportunities. And I'm just thinking, it's an interesting discussion that I constantly struggle with myself. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember, right? It's a very finite number of people that can go in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Most basements can only hold 10, maybe 15 people. And at every session, for it to be a session that people enjoy, they can't be 15 people that have never been there before. There's going to have to at least be a core group of people, right, that are guiding and in some key positions and what have you. So how many slots do you really have for first timers? Not many. So I mean, that kind of works against it being hey, we're going to have a model raring event in the in Madison Square Garden. Let's bring 20,200 people. Can't do it, right? It is a challenge. And as Tom mentioned, there are the open events in numerous places around the country. So I think that's for people that are trying to get involved somehow and don't have a local network already in place. That's the alternate route, so to speak.
I don't think there's that many open events. I know Island Ops is open, but Prairie Rail is not. It's invitation only. I don't really think there's that many open events. There's a couple. Anyway.
Lionel, if they'll invite me to Prairie Rails, they'll invite anybody.
I'm pretty sure they won't invite me.
That sounds like a you problem.
No, I don't think so. But that's the problem, right? People somebody will be perceived as such and such, and they'll be excluded. It's a funny part of model railroading that constantly bothers me because, okay, I'll give an example. I have one of the guys that's a pretty regular on the show, Mike Hauk, who is has a beautiful, beautiful layout just outside of Erie, Pennsylvania. I would love to have an AML operating session at his place, but he can only hold 5 or 6 people. Well, I don't really want to go to Mike's place with 4 or 5 people from the AML Nation and post pictures on the fans page and say, hey, look what I got to do that nobody else did. It's a very peculiar part of model railroading that constantly gnaws at my brain.
Well, I have something else your brain can gnaw at here instead. So there's a website called operatingsessions.com.
Yeah.
And if you go to that and look at the upcoming events, there's event details and layout info to all these open invitation events. Granted, they can't have 500 yeses to an event, but it's open. You know, people can look up these things and seek to get invited to them. And there's everything from Sound Rail is on here, which is out in Seattle area. You have individual layouts listed on here. Here's a guy, New York Central North Jersey Division operating session. He's in Stillwater, New Jersey. Do you guys know who that is? Anybody?
I do.
No.
I do.
Is it Phil?
Yes.
No. Where?
Phil
Yeah,
Chivetta.
it's Phil Chivetta.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right, right. I've never been to his house. I feel excluded. I never got invited.
Right. You feel excluded. I know it's a fascinating oxymoron.
But yet here on this website, maybe if I click on the link, I could say, hey, you know, I'd like to come see your layout sometime. And you can reach out to the people through this website.
Oh,
there's an NMRA event, the Op Around the Clock weekend in Rochester, New York. Indian Nations Division NMRA layout design and operation weekends in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's this coming weekend.
Utah Belt North Division operating session in McKinney, Texas. That's on March 23rd. So these guys just list their monthly operating sessions on here too, I guess.
Yeah. Oh,
here's a St. Louis Tuesday operating group invitational operating session. Rail Express in Westfield, Indiana.
It's a great
Utah
website.
Belt again.
It's a fabulous website, and it's called operatingsessions.com.
Mm-hmm.
So there's individual layouts listing their operating session on here, as well as operating events. Here's Island Ops is listed on here in Mineola, New York, on Long Island. And they give you links to the event details. Here's a Central Division NMRA Op Till You Drop event in Syracuse. Here's a Michiana Division NMRA Regional Convention. Rocky Ops is on here. This is, honestly, I never looked at this website, but it just came to mind, and I'm really intrigued by all the layouts that are listed on here.
You sound very angry, Tom.
No, this is pretty interesting.
That site is the work of Eric Smith.
Yeah.
From OPSEG.
We interviewed him actually about this whole website about a couple of years ago, I think. And someday you'll be able to.
No need to feel excluded in the hobby anymore.
There you go.
Well, for sure. I'm for sure.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, that's a problem. That's a me problem, I guess. Like I say, I don't necessarily want to have a private thing and then post pictures, but I find that very unnerving for myself. Anyways, let's carry on. I think we're of two different. I think and that's interesting because you guys have the opportunity to go to a lot of fabulous layouts. So maybe you don't get the same sense that I get. So that's kind of cool. I think it's one of the interests. I think that's also one of the great things about the new digital age of model railroading is I got a couple of guys, Brad Williamson, who I believe is about 3 feet 6 inches tall. He sounds a lot taller on the air. And Patrick Moore, they've got this thing called Iron City N Scale. And it started as a Facebook page, and the thing has just grown and grown and grown, and to the point where they get together at meets and everything. And it's kind of like, I was saying to them the other day, they're kind of like building an entrance to model railroading, which I think is very, very cool.
That's what we found at Harold's house back in the day, Harold Worthwine, was there was no internet connection. There was no operatingsessions.com thing to go and look and say, hey, I'm like, wow, there's a guy that's 25 minutes from my house. I should see if I can come to an operating session sometime. We somehow found our way to Harold's. Mm-hmm. And through that network, and that's all the internet's doing is it's digitally networking you. We just did it manually back in the day. And, geez, this thing today, if I was new getting into the hobby and became interested in operations and I stumbled across this enables you to put yourself in a position to get invited to go to those events. because you'll go to this guy's house in Stillwater and he'll have somebody at his layout that sees you're really into prototype operations, or you like this, or you like the paperwork into stuff, or, you like to dispatch. And they say, hey, we need a good dispatcher on this other layout over here. You want to come here sometime? And it's just building the network of friends that become your lifelong friends is what it is.
Oh, sure. That's for sure. But we'll agree to disagree, because there's a lot of people that don't get invited just because of who they are, and will never get that opportunity. And that's to me, that's one of the flaws of model railroading, but I don't really know what the answer to fix that problem is, so it really doesn't matter. Now, how are we going to address this gigantic list of layouts that you guys have operated on over the years? I have no idea how we're going to attack this list. Anybody got any suggestions?
Well, everybody could pick one of their most favorite from a certain region.
That's true. Tell me about Jerry. You guys all know Jerry Dizek as well. And he's a columnist in Model Railroader. Have you guys all operated there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And what's the operation schemes like that there? Is there any place you guys haven't operated? Maybe that would be the shorter list to attack.
Well, I'm probably at the bottom of the list in terms of number of places that I've operated at. So, yeah, there's a lot of places I have not been to.
Okay.
But I'd like to talk about Jerry's briefly, if I could, because it was Jerry's layout that was my portal to getting involved in model railroad operations. And my access there was not because of the model railroad, but because he and I share a strong interest in the prototype New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railway in its glory days back in the 40s and 50s. And he hosted a group of similar like-minded enthusiasts at his house one day. We all brought boxes of, old locomotive records and odds and ends and shared stories. And then he took us down to see the first version of his NYSNW layout. And I was taken by it. And I was aware of model railroad operations because way back when I was a young kid, I had read Bruce Chubb's How to Operate Your Model Railroad. Still have that book, by the way. And so I asked Jerry, do you operate here? And he said, yes, I do. And first session, I met Harold Worthwine. Harold said, hey, you should come to my house. After a couple more sessions, I met Ted Pamperin. Hey, you should come to my house. That's how it happened. And Jerry's layout was pivotal for me. So he took it down and rebuilt it after a few years. And it operates as a timetable train order railroad. It has one tower operation where there's an operator who throws signal and switch levers and displays signals to get through one interlock, or actually two interlockings. But overall, it's a timetable train order operation.
And it can be found at njprorail.org. So I guess that's part of that particular website. Anyways, njprorail.org/Jerry Dizek. DZIEDZIC.
Common spelling.
Very common.
It's just like Smith, but different.
Yeah, exactly. The Q is silent. Doug, move your microphone a little bit farther away from your nose. Move it up towards your nose and away, because it's below your nose, and all the air is coming out of your nose and right into your microphone.
Better?
Yeah, or stop breathing. That's another possible okay, so but it's like my poker in Florida. I got into a group of people playing poker because I met one person that took me to a poker game, and from that poker game, I behaved, and there was a fella there that invited me to his house and to his poker game, and on and on and on. And yes, there are people that get left out of that. I don't know. Model railroading seems to me like it just should be a better. I don't know. I don't understand what I can't very well describe what I'm thinking, but you're buzzing again. Holy moly. This is maybe the shortest podcast we do in the history of the AML Nation, between the buzzing and the nose blowing.
See, I'm not even moving or breathing, and it's still doing it.
Well, yeah, but it's not coming from your microphone, so it's not a problem. So, Ralph, have you operated at Jerry D's house?
Oh yes, I've known Jerry for years. Again, met him at Harold's, and it's funny. I still remember as a late teenager, in my early 20s, finding out that Jerry had a layout, and Jerry, I'd love to come see it sometime, and yeah, we could arrange that. And then the next time I'd see Jerry, well, Jerry, can I? I'd really like to come over. We'll see. It took me a couple times to wear poor Jerry down before I got an actual invite to his house, and here we are. I consider Jerry a very good friend and mentor, and I met many other people through Jerry. So,
and how often do you guys get to how often does he operate?
Well, he spends a lot of his time during the year out in Breckenridge, Colorado.
Oh, okay.
He has a house out there. So
that would mean he doesn't operate that often?
No, he does. When he's here on the East Coast, he
Okay.
We operate.
And what Doug, you've operated there too?
Yes, I have.
And how did that go? Hey, Doug, let me ask you this question and count to 1,002 before you answer. Do you know if he has any Rapido trains?
You're a fast track for model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's HO, the fast track is Rapido.
So how does he assign? Is he like the thing I was fascinated by when we interviewed Ken McQuarrie was like there was no way I was going to get to run the helper crew, be part of the helper crew for a long time if I ever got to operate there. How does Jerry assign jobs?
He does a seniority roster. Jerry kept a log of the first time that people come to his layout and visit the layout or operate on the layout, and he gives them a sequential number like a train crew. When you hire on, your hire date is your seniority number. So Jerry has a list of the job assignments on the layout, and you gather around and he draws numbers out of a cup. Everybody draws a number, and whoever has the highest number, which job do you want? So it goes, he does it that way.
Run that one past me again. He does it by seniority.
I got mixed up. He does have a seniority roster, and he was doing it by seniority for a while. And he also uses a lottery system where he has people draw numbers from a cup, and whoever has the highest number, you pick your job.
Oh, okay.
List of jobs.
Ralph, do you have regular operating sessions?
I do not.
Do you plan on ever having regular operating sessions?
I do. I mean, I have in the years past. I just have had other things going on, and I haven't had a chance to get back into the swing of things.
Right. Okay, let me try this one. From all the layouts you guys have operated, what is your preferred method of having jobs assigned? Or do you guys go in and have you ever ended up on a layout where you're thinking this is a great question. Have you ever ended up on a layout where you're thinking to yourself, I'd like to leave now? No, you don't. Obviously, we're not going to say the name of the layout or the name of the owner or where the layout is located, because that would be mean and cruel and something we wouldn't want to do. But Ralph, have you ever been to a layout where you within a half an hour you were like, I'd like to leave now?
I've, in all honesty, not beating around the bush, I've been to layouts that I haven't been thrilled about for one reason or another, but I'm a guest, and I do my best to, of course, respect the owner and his creation and get through it. I mean, I would never leave, but yeah, I mean, I've had varying degrees of enjoyment. Sure, I think that's only natural in anything. Heck, I've gone to concerts and been like, why am I here? Some of them are the concerts that I'm playing actively in, and I go, why am I here? But no, like I said, you owe it to the owner because more than likely you were invited, so it's a courtesy thing. And Sure, there's always going to be something that is the layout not working right? Are there people around you that are that you perceive otherwise to be not very friendly or annoying? But you work through it and you make the best of it.
What is your number one priority? What's the number one thing that will drive you bonkers when you go to a layout that really throws you off, that kind of, not, and this is probably too harsh of a way to put it, but leaves a bad taste in your mouth? Something you really, what's your number one bugaboo about things that you really it kind of turns you off?
Well, I think I can get past more. I can get more past people who may be either other guests or regulars that may treat the new person not nicely. I think it's more of a operation. When I say operation, I don't mean timetable train order over CTC. I mean, is it running smoothly? Is it are things derailing all the time? Is the electrical contact spotty so trains stall all the time? So I think it's that. I think it's the overall mechanical operation of the layout. If that's not smooth, that's no fun.
But to be fair, right, if derailments and spotty operation were like automatic, I'm not going back there aren't many layouts you'd get to, right? There aren't a lot of layouts that operate flawlessly.
That's true.
So it's a fine line.
Yeah, but you'd have to say, for something that we all are familiar with, the OC, I mean, you guys put in a lot of work to make sure that it runs as flawlessly as possible. So, I mean, that's a sliding scale of how much you're willing to put up with.
Yes, I agree with that.
There must be layouts, Ralph, where you've been invited to, you've been to it, it's pretty far down the scale, and you've invited you back, and you're like, I think I got to wash my hair that night.
Yes. But, again, it may not necessarily be, you may enjoy the idea of the layout. Let's just say it's somebody else who was modeling the Lehigh Valley. Well, that's really awesome, but it didn't run so well. And, maybe you've only met the person one time, so you can't just kind of be like, well, I don't want to come back because of this, and the next thing. But it's a fine line. I don't want to make it sound like it's, this be all or end all kind of thing. But to me, that's one of my, I don't want to, I'm not to say that I don't want to come back, but makes it not enjoyable for me.
Yeah, but with the amount of experience, I mean, if we ever added up the number of layouts you guys, the number of operating sessions you guys have been to as a whole, it would be well over 2,000 probably. So, I mean, this is a great opportunity to ask experienced operators for people that are building layouts. Like, say you were building a layout that was 23 feet by 50 feet in your basement, multi-layered.
Don't do it.
There'd be things that you'd want to avoid so that people would come back and operate. So
I agree. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your line. Now I agree. I mean, I think mechanical reliability is something everybody who builds a layout should strive for. Some of us are better at it than others. I admit my first forays into having people over, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty at all, and I thought I was prepared, and I wasn't prepared. So I think that's also part of why I've taken so long to get back into the having sessions game, is because I've become, through people like Tom and Dave who are very meticulous, and I've learned a lot over the years.
And people who will help you, Ralph.
Exactly, Thomas.
Ralph, when you
Yes.
do start having operating sessions, do you think you'll be having any Rapido trains?
You're a fast track for model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
But of course.
Okay, that's good. What about you, Doug? What's your? Have you ever been to a layout where you kind of went? Again, obviously, we would never mention the layout. We would never mention the location. We would never mention the time or who was there. But have you had that experience where you've been to a layout and you'd really rather not ever go back?
Not necessarily not wanting to go back, but some of the things that I think about, and when you had asked us to put the list together, and I went through my list, the things that get me are electrical and mechanical unreliability. But then even more so than that, to me, is making sure that, and I think it's an art to balance prototype operations and the fun factor for your operating crews. I mean, if you want to make a prototype to the nth degree, there's a lot of people that will not have fun because there's things that happen on the real railroad that you would never replicate because people will not have fun. So it to me, it has to be that fine balance. And most of the layouts that I've had the opportunity to operate on over a long period of time, I always call the owners general managers, going back to my operating days. And the general managers have done a great job of balancing prototype and, let's have some fun with this. And then I've met folks that they want to do things to the nth degree. So I said, okay, you want to roll that out? Let's talk about placement of cars and trains and how we do this with dangerous cars, et cetera, et cetera. And then somebody will look at me and say, well, what are you talking about? And so, well, you said you want to be prototype, so we can be real prototype, or we can make sure that we have some fun with this. So those are some of my bugaboos as far as layouts. But for the most part, for myself, and I've been to a lot of places and seen a lot of different things, and it's been great, and it continues to be quite the honor, and it's quite humbling when I went through that list and saw all the places where I've been. And I think about some of the folks, unfortunately, who have passed on, but I think of all of the good times and the information that has been shared. And going back to what Tom mentioned early on about Harold's, I got my invitation to Harold's through two other guys, and there was a group of us that used to come up from the Philadelphia area. Those were glorious days. That was a whole day trip for us. And to think of all of the folks and several of the gentlemen in this group tonight are guys that I met at Harold's. And then to think of how that network for myself has expanded. Part of that because of Harold's, part of it because I've lived in other parts of the country, part of it because I had the opportunity for 2 years to be the president of the OPSIG. That led to a lot of different invitations. So for me, it's a collective, and all of what we're doing now, being part of the podcast, it continues to grow and expand for me. And I consider myself very, very fortunate. So I know I've gone away from your initial question there, but I wanted to bring all that in together because it's a lot of different things that go into this for me personally. And I feel very blessed and very fortunate to be able to do this on a very regular basis and to meet some really good, sound people who are good people and are positive people. There's so much negativity nowadays that to have this group where we're all sharing this fellowship, and I see that when people go through life experiences where things aren't all that good, and I see the group of modelers that I'm part of, and as a railroader I worked with years ago said, we take care of our own. The model railroaders, we do. We take care of our own. We'll bust each other's chops, but if you're not part of the group, you can't do that. We can do it, but an outsider can't. But it's a great collective. It's a great fellowship.
I think you've hit on a massively important point, which is probably you could go full circle to what my original discussion was of, I'd love to have an AML Nation operating weekend, but the AML Nation exists and there's, 2,700 people on the fans page. And you're right. You're right. The people I've met and the relationships I've made through model railroading are, when you become it's my favorite example of all, you can be in the Dallas Symphony Orchestra and meet a guy in Boston that's, a truck driver for UPS. But if these two guys make some sort of a connection, about a railroad or a particular locomotive, if these two guys make a connection through model railroading, not only do they become friends, they become lifelong friends, and more often than not, close friends. And that's one of the most valuable things that model railroading gives to us, is that exactly what you talked about there, Doug. I think it's a great point. I think it's a huge point. and it's something I'd love to, try to keep as the main vein that takes us along this journey, because of all the great layouts you guys have operated on and all the experiences you have. Really what this discussion needs to be as we go along is talking about the experiences you've had. Maybe the next thing is not just the list of layouts you've had, but some of the great memories you guys have had. Because it's like being part of a hockey team. Like I was fortunate enough as a teenager to play well enough to be on hockey teams that stuck together and, played in tournaments and things like that. And the relationships you gain through doing stuff together is priceless.
It's a cohesive experience.
Yeah, it's priceless.
It builds bonds between people when you experience things together and sharing it. And whether it's, in my career as a police officer, if you had, a really hot call where there was real danger involved and you got through it and you covered each other, you come out of it a tighter group.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's not really dangerous situations in model railroading, but here you go into a situation, you have to work together as a group in order for this thing to be a success. In order for the layout session to function, you have to work together. You depend on each other. You have to watch out for each other. And when you go through those experiences together, it builds bonds, it builds camaraderie. It builds cohesion. There's cohesiveness to the group then.
Well, yeah, like I would have never met any of you guys had Rich not listened to the podcast and introduced Dave to the podcast, and Dave writing into the podcast. That's how it grows. Doug, here's a good. I wish I had a bigger vocabulary than 27 words. It would really help. You say you've built this, all these people you've met. How do you find that has increased substantially since the advent of social media?
The meeting of people?
Yeah, has it increased your enjoyment of the hobby because of the relationships you've built? It's easier to stay in touch with people. You've probably met some people online. You and I met online. And that you end up meeting later on. Do you feel like it's increased your overall enjoyment of the hobby?
I wouldn't say that it's increased my enjoyment. What it has done is it makes getting information for myself when I'm doing research, or for me to have avenues where I can get information out to other folks. It's made that easier, but increasing my enjoyment, not really. Because a lot of the roots for me were established before social media. And so what I'll do personally is I'll use it as a tool. Like I said, for research, yeah, I like that part of it because it helps me do research quicker. But as far as the overall enjoyment, it's a piece of it. But like I said, the roots for me were established long before all of what we have with social media.
So you and I met on social media, and basically what you're saying is, even though we met on social media, it didn't increase the enjoyment of the hobby for you. It was basically meeting me online was of really no consequence to your life whatsoever.
No, that's not what I said.
Well, that's what I heard.
Well, that may be what you heard, but that's not what I said.
I'm keeping very, very quiet.
You guys need a marriage counselor is what it sounds like.
What about you? Rich, did we ask you what your bugaboos were about operating on layouts?
No, I have not answered yet. The first question that you asked about, have I ever gone to a layout and decided, I'd really rather not be here? And I can truly answer, no, I've never had that experience. I've always found things to be interested in. Maybe this is my nature, but if there's problems, I sort of want to try and help them figure out what the problems are and what can be done better. So yeah, every place I've ever gone, I've found something positive to take away from, and I can't think of anywhere I've not wanted to give it another try.
What's your biggest bugaboo about a layout when you go to it? If X isn't the way you would prefer.
Well, I'm going to echo Doug's comment earlier about finding that right balance between how prototypical you want to be versus how much you want to make it, an enjoyable way to spend a day off or Saturday or whatever it's going to be. Yes, trains do sit in sidings for 4 hours on the real railroad. Nobody wants to do that as an engineer on a model railroad. That's not, but you feel like you're wasting your time. So, finding that right balance. And conversely, any operations that are so, fanciful or so unprototypical, to me, that takes away from the realism you're trying to accomplish. So finding that right balance, that's important. The mechanical reliability, absolutely, that's important. Recognizing that it's not going to be perfect in most cases. Aisles is another thing that, once you're at some place, if the aisles are too narrow or choked with people, that's kind of a frustration.
That's a great point. That is a great point. That's a fabulous point.
And I'll just throw out one other thing, which is, I'll call it more of a pet peeve. It's not something that says, oh, I won't come back or whatever. But I don't really, just me personally, I don't really enjoy seeing people propping up car cards against the cars in a yard while a session is going on. I see that, and it just automatically takes me, out of any shred of reality. When like somebody's trying to break up a whole string of cars.
Right. That's a good point, though. That's what this discussion is. That's why I want to try to make this discussion work. So far, it's not, but that's why I want to. But that's the whole point. If we can get you guys chatting and talking about it, it's because you four guys have got a mountains worth of experience in operating layouts, and like thousands. There's probably almost 100 layouts that we could talk about that you guys have operated on. And I mean, it's something, any information that we can pass along to people that are listening, because Tom, I'm going to bounce right over into, you're the kind of guy that is like, we've had this discussion, Tom, offline. You're the kind of guy that has to find out every piece of information about a particular subject in order to satisfy your brain. Me, on the other hand, I go, he's the guy that went to university for this, so maybe I'll just let him do it. So how do you plan on balancing, prototype operations with your layout, with making the layout enjoyable to operate?
Well, if you get to know more and more railroaders, prototype railroaders, real guys, a lot of them aren't very happy at work, and you don't want to model that experience. So you want to take away the fun parts, running the trains. It's, to me, the whole operating session, whether it's timetable train order or whether your CTC layout, whatever the operating scheme is, it's a puzzle. It's a logic puzzle that you have to solve and make these model trains move through the scene following the rules, as what prototype modelers do. And you have to capture that fun of it without making it, I really had a bad day at work. I've been out to the La Mesa Club out in California. Depending on, they have these timetable train order sessions a couple of times a year. And there's a lot of traffic on a railroad that shouldn't be timetable train order. And depending who the dispatcher is, you can real time sit in a siding for 4 hours, 6 hours. And it's miserable. And you don't want to have people have that experience. So Rich is absolutely right about, you got to manage it so that those events don't occur. And Rich even takes it an extra step when he's being the train master at Dave Abeley's layout, is he makes sure you don't get the same kind of train again. If you had a TV train, you're going to get a different, a manifest next time, or you'll get the Amtrak train next time. He makes sure you don't have the same train experience over and over again, because he wants you to have an enjoyable, diverse experience as you go through it. And that's something I got to play with here as I'm evolving the construction of this layout and think out the operation of it. Is with what I'm doing, there's a diverse amount of jobs. You have trains that are just going to run straight through, don't do much of anything on CTC territory. Then you're going to have locals that work in timetable train order territory that are going to have to look out for everything, and they really have to pay attention to what they're doing. So it'll have different skill level jobs for the variety of people's skill interests. And I think that having those variety of jobs will make it that people can find their own place here.
How many people do you think you're going to need to operate the layout?
It's going to be somewhere between 16 and 20.
Wow. I can't even imagine that.
Me neither, but it's going to eat people up. It really will.
Yeah, and I think, probably one of the things you guys don't realize that I get to see from the outside world, because I've spent most of my model railroading life with my nose pressed up against the glass, wishing that I could be part of that scene, is that to the outside world, a lot of people, like we were talking about my buddy Boston Joe that passed away at an early age. I mean, he was terrified to go to an operating session because a lot of people who talk about operations seem very much like it's the prototyper, it's nothing, and we operate in a prototypical way, and blah, 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 blah. When in reality, hardly any model railroad operates in a prototypical way. My favorite quote was from my buddy Jim. Oh my God, what was his the senior editor at Model Railroader. He just
Jim Hediger.
Jim Hediger. He spent a short time working in DT&I and the tower, and he said if he wrote 8 orders a night, it was a busy night on timetable and train order. And you go to any timetable and train order model railroad, and there's always some guy in the corner writing as fast as he can, and sending out orders. So that's an interesting. That could be another interesting discussion. Is like I'm interested in how people find that balance between real prototype and model railroading operations. Because model railroad operations is endlessly fun if it's done right. And to me, I always think of it as like playing Monopoly. If one guy is not playing the game properly, it ruins it for everybody else. So you have to follow the rules.
That gets back to the Dave Abeley's statement, right, about the duty, if you will, when you go to somebody's layout to try and observe or not obey. That's too strong of a word, but operate in conjunction with what the layout owner's vision is for his layout.
Yeah,
and I agree with that.
It's not like golf. I mean, I play golf in Florida on it 3 times a week with usually about 30 guys. And there's a half a dozen guys that are pulling their ball out from under the bush. And it's very hard to control who's counting their full score and who's not. And whereas in model railroading, if you're not following the rules, it ain't going to work because there's always 6 or 7 other guys minimum counting on you to do it properly. If you're going to start use finger switching cars, it's going to really take out a good portion of the fun. I have an important.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Lionel. I just wanted to comment on the train order quantity issue. The one thing to remember is that most model railroads that I'm familiar with that use timetable and train order, there's one operator position that is representing operators at multiple stations or towers or whatever up and down the line. So from that perspective, you would expect there to be more than whatever would have been written in any one specific location. It's not to say that model railroaders probably don't do more than would be typical because, let's face it, trying to get back to the fun side, you want to have enough trains to keep people busy. So
yeah. See, now for me, a few times I've operated at Uncle Dave's layout, I would love to see more red signals on the main line. Uh-oh, somebody made a noise there. Did somebody
I was snickering.
Yes, you were snickering. Why were you snickering?
Why do you want to see more red signals?
Because the trains just seem to go from one end to the other without stopping.
Are you saying they act like slot cars?
I am not saying anything because I think you guys. I think you guys
are. Amazing analogy.
I think you guys are dragging me down a hole that I don't want to be part of. Oh yeah.
What? Us? Stop.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what's happening here. I apologize.
High-speed railroading there, Lionel. You know,
We got him on the ropes, Ralph.
Yeah, you
Yes.
do. Yeah, you're pounding me. I'm hoping that. I'm hoping the.
down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
So, but again, it comes back to it's Dave's railroad. The OC is Dave's railroad, and his railroad represents the railroad that he rail fanned when he was in college at Syracuse, which was a double track, high density main line, and that's his vision. And so when we're there, even though you might want to see more red signals, you have to recognize that he wants to see throughput. And Jack, who's often the train dispatcher, is using the creativeness of the interlocking locations to route trains around the trains that are working the yard, etc. And for him and some of us, getting to see some of the more unusual signal aspects, like a medium approach medium, for example, like we just grin at each other when we see that happening. So for every person that wants one thing, there's other people that enjoy other aspects of it.
The truth about the Chicago line is I did quite a bit of rail fanning on it in the early mid 90s. I don't think I ever saw a Conrail train sitting on a red signal. I was rail fanning the section between New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, and stuff was flying.
Well, exactly. And I wish there was
like
more
slot cars.
And I wish there was more cheese balls at Dave's too. I mean, it's like just because a person like I like more of a slow motion kind of operating, right? That's just the way I operated. Like, I like that kind of slow motion. You got to wait for this train to get around you kind of thing. And, that's what I enjoyed. I enjoyed the more switching, more everything. And I think I bet Rich and Ralph, you guys might be able to back me up on this. I think I probably am the only guy that showed up at the Onondaga cutoff and after the end of the first session said I would have left after an hour because I wasn't having any fun.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I think I'm probably the only guy that ever did that.
Well, funny story. When I first met Dave, model railroading by signal indication was new to me. And while I had a great time and I felt very welcomed and I knew a lot of the people there, it's like, yeah, it's neat. It's a different kind of thing, but I don't know. It's not my usual thing. I, for lack of a better term, I grew up timetable train order operation. This was new. It was different. I'm like, I don't know. But then I bought into Dave's vision of what he was trying to do. And I've come to love it. And because I did that, Dave and I have become like the best of friends. So
says you.
Well, true. That can be a very one-sided story. But yeah.
Well,
I gave it. I did give it a second chance. But again, I was a fish out of water. But I took the step to say, hey, Dave, what can I do to learn more about what you're doing and buy into your vision? And here we are.
I think as a model railroad host, if you want to get the biggest value out of all the work you've put in and you have operating sessions, you have to be pretty open-minded to deal with all the personalities you're going to have on your layout. A great example of that for me is my friend Chris Fitness, Chris Adams, the Valley local. Have any of you guys ever been to that layout?
No.
You absolutely must go. Chris, you got to invite these guys to an operating session. Take the time and drive up to Old Saybrook and go to one of his operating sessions. It's a spectacular railroad, and it runs very well, and you'll have a lovely time because him and his wife are great hosts. But one of Chris Adams' pluses is that I can go to that timetable train order railroad and have a great time because there's no pressure. There's no pressure to like it. I bet you that's probably something I would have liked to have put into words a long, long time ago. I always felt like there were some railroads that there was pressure to like this system because for a while, timetable and train order became the only way you were allowed to do it. If you weren't doing timetable and train order, you weren't doing it right. And that was never going to be a thing for me. I was never going to do that. And one of the great things about, I think the layout owner, we should have, too bad there's not a presentation once a year for how to be a great layout owner, because Chris Adams has that down to a T. I mean,
actually, one of the most recent OPSIG newsletters has an article by Matt Thompson that's along those lines.
And the OPSIG, by the way, the OPSIG is one of the best values in all of model railroading. What is it, $10 a year? And they have a spectacular quarterly magazine and just tons and tons of stuff. It's like, I think it is. It's like $10 a year or something.
Yep.
It's some ridiculous amount. And what you get for that electronic subscription fee or membership fee is $10 a year. And
so if I could just jump in here, it's the April issue of the Dispatcher's Office that just came out. And the article is by Matt Thompson, and it's called Making the Layout User-Friendly.
There you go.
So sorry.
Very important part.
Yeah. Are you going to do that, Tom?
Ergonomics is definitely an important part of the layout construction in terms of your aisle space, your entryway. It's got to be, first of all, safe for people. You look at the age of the group, and we got a lot of older members. You got some people that aren't in great shape, and if you have narrow winding Keebler stairs down to your basement, that's almost hazardous to some people to navigate. So you got to make it as safe as you can. I redid the entrance to my basement when we put the addition on the house, and I used to have a landing and then turn 90 degrees and go up to the door to the next level up. And instead, I made the stairway straight, and I moved the door so it's just a straight flight down. I put a big, huge, heavy steel pipe railing on it so that there's something solid to hold on to going down the stairs, and it's all well lit so you can see where you're walking. And the pathway outside is clear and safe for people to navigate. That's the first thing, is you got to make sure people are going to be safe in the environment. Then you have to be comfortable. What's the climate control system? Do you have heating? Do you have air conditioning in the basement? That just to make it comfortable. And that also lends itself to layout stability. If you don't have a stable environment for your layout's not going to survive well. You need to make it easily understandable for people. Things need to be identified. People need to know where they are. Places have to be labeled. The paperwork has to be easily understood by people. You can portray prototype relevance to it, but it has to be understandable to boomers, people who are only here a couple of times. You can't have them confused by what you're presenting them on how to run the trains. So you need it to be an experience where someone who's very limited experience at your layout, hopefully they're a good operator to begin with. When they walk into your layout, give them 10 minutes and they're like, okay, I got this. And then they can go play the logic game and puzzle through the operations and have fun with it.
Yeah. I mean, if I'd listened to all that before I built the layout, I'm not sure I ever would have built one. That sounds like sounds like a tall order. Although you got to have but you're right. All those things you're right. There's, you got to do all that stuff. How are we going to attack this gigantic list? Anybody got any thoughts on that?
State by state.
Ooh, I like that.
We started in New Jersey. Let's bang New Jersey out, and just highlight the layouts that we've been on, and what we like best about each layout.
Do you ever sleep, Tom?
Nope.
I didn't think so.
It's overrated.
What do you think, Doug? What's the best way to attack this?
Yeah, the state by state sounds good, but I mean, what's your end goal? What are you looking to take away from this?
My end goal would be, I found 4 guys that have years and years and years, decades worth of experience operating model railroads, and I think the stories of operating individual model railroads, I think primarily just a great discussion of. If you mention Jim Homoki's Newark terminal, I mean, there's got to be experiences you remember about being at Jim's place, and along the way, discussions can come from that. there's always, once you get a discussion started, once you get a podcast started, you always hit on something that will create a discussion. And my goal is to have you guys relate what it's like to have been operating model railroads for decades. Because I don't think you guys have any idea where you fit in the overall scheme of model railroad operations. Most people haven't had the opportunities that you guys have had. It's like being a long haul trucker for 40 years, and at the end, when you retire, you say, "Hey, do you have any stories?" And you go, "No, it was it's just a drive from here to there," which of course wouldn't be the case at all.
So I'd like to share a story that took place in New Jersey, but it's more of a general comment on model railroad operations and operators that I think could apply to anybody. And that goes back to 2013, when I assisted Jerry Dietzig at his NYSW layout when he hosted a bunch of visiting operators from all over the country. And one of those visiting operators was Jack Ozanich. So it was a thrill to meet him. And the thing that really jumped out at me was how he filled out his time book for every assignment that he was given that day. Of course, Jack being a career railroader, he had a time book, keep track of his runs to make sure he got paid correctly and what have you. And he did the same thing in his model railroading. And I'm sorry to say that I didn't immediately embrace that as something I would do, because, man, I would love to look back at all the railroads sessions I've been to and all the train assignments I've had. So a suggestion for those that are out in the hobby, something to think about, a way to keep track.
Where would you get one of those time books, Ralph? Or Rich?
Yeah, what are you asking Ralph for? What are you asking Ralph for?
Me personally, since I don't have access to them, I would just use a spiral notebook, right? A small spiral notebook. But you probably can buy old time books at Railroadiana shows or on eBay or something like that.
Because I have one in my hand. It's by the Brotherhood of Railroad Trainmen.
And why doesn't that surprise me, Tom?
I think it's a prototype time book that the crews would use, and somehow I ended up with a blank one, and I started using it for operating sessions. And I actually drew on it when I made up that list. I found my time book, and here's Jim Herzog's Shamokin division on the Reading, and Tony Custer's and Ted Pamprin's and Harold Worthwine's, and I listed, I did the O&W detour train on Harold Worthwine's layout on September 12th, 2009. And then I did CX 2025 out of Port Jervis, because you have where you went on duty and where you went off duty.
That's awesome. I wish I had thought to embrace that as someone who's a bit of a, I like lists and things like that. I mean, I actually have I keep a book of every, I take the train to work every day, and every day I write down what train I rode and what car number I sat in. And I've been doing that since 2014. Why? I don't know, but it's something that pleases me to do that.
Well, that's part of being an individual, right? It's part of what draws, it's what it's the kind of thing that, it's like, gee, I wonder what I'd sound like if I started my own podcast. I wonder what that would be like. And then what I do is I have 2 podcasts every week, and I've done that for the last 10 years. And why do I do it? Who knows? I just really, really enjoy listening and talking to people. It's all part of what it is, the kinds of things you like to do. I got a great question for you, Doug Watts.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep.
You seem apprehensive already. Yeah, answer me this honestly, Ralph, or Doug, not Ralph. I have no interest in Ralph's opinion. Answer me this honestly, Doug. Are you okay, Ralph?
That makes 2 of us.
Attaboy. There you go. Now we're getting somewhere. Answer me this honestly, Doug. A lot of the time, you're just not sure what's going to happen next when you're standing around me. Is that pretty accurate?
When I'm standing around you?
Or listening to me, or talking to me, or Not every question is serious, Doug. Never mind.
This is true.
This is not a model railroad. Primarily, this is entertainment. It just happens to be entertainment using the conduit of model railroading. All right. Oh, Doug, this is a great question for you. What would you like this series of discussions about individual layouts that a certain group of people have operated on? What would you like to get out of it?
I'd like to learn more about the experiences that folks have had and what the railroads were all about and what their takeaways were.
Okay. What about you, Ralph? What would you like to get out of this if we continued on with this series?
Doug pretty much said it spot on what I was thinking. I mean, again, going back to everything we've said, there's people who aren't able to get out and about and enjoy the larger model railroading world. And if we can kind of sort of bring our experiences and, to them and make the conduit for them, and that's great. That's the best thing that I think we can do with this. And I think we've already covered some really great points so far, even though we've gone off on tangents, but that's okay. That's going to happen. So.
Tangents are the best thing that can happen on a podcast. Tangents are the best thing that can happen on a podcast.
Trust me. On a railroad.
And they're pretty good models also.
There you go. Look at that.
Trains run best on a tangent.
Look at that. There's Rich being witty.
That's what he does.
Absolutely. After all, he's the whiz.
He's the whiz, not the wit. Big difference. Huge difference. Wow. You gotta get blue ink off your dog. You're talking to Rich all day long. You want to know why eyebrows grow more than ear hair? The Rich is your guy. Rich is the guy you turn to all the time. Last question. Okay, we'll wrap this one up because this went pretty good. Oh yeah, Tom, what would you like to get out of this series of discussions?
Just some insight as to what makes us enjoy the variety of model railroads that we've operated on, and hearing highlights about them and inspiring people to seek out those experiences and providing them with ways to avail themselves of those experiences.
I would say trying to understand what makes each of the layouts that you've ever been to, what makes them different? What are the unique features about them that are shareable? Yeah,
because again, I think, and the key to this, making this particular series of interviews interesting, is you guys have to speak up and be prepared to offer your opinions without necessarily having to be asked. Sometimes, not that that's, but because the key is, Rich. The key is here transparency. At the old AML network, transparency is number one. Accuracy, kind of an afterthought. But transparency. So we all got to be prepared to speak up. Here's my last question, which is huge when you're operating on layouts. This, to me, is the number one question that needs to be answered about layout operations. Snacks.
Love them. And beer.
They've got to include beverages.
Right, or cider. And I mean, water, of course. After you drink too many beer, you need a water. So it's proper hydration. Yes. Let's call it that. Let's call it proper hydration.
There's a fella
let's call it proper nutrition.
That too.
That covers snacks and beverages.
There you go.
There's a fella in Auburn, Florida, who has a beautiful L&N layout. His first name is John. His last name escapes me, but he has operating sessions every year at the Cocoa Beach prototype RPM meet. And he has, the first time I went, he has the greatest selection of snacks I had ever seen for operating a model railroad. He had big bowls of M&Ms. He had potato chips. He had all sorts of sodas and beers. And that was at that point, I said to myself, snacks are the key to any model railroad operation.
You're not wrong.
Snacks are the key.
If you don't eat, you'll die.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it might take a while, but you will die if you don't eat. So that's a very important part.
Okay, so let's just because you guys are all familiar with the Onondaga cutoff, what do you guys call it? The High Line or the Chicago Line, the Speed Line, where trains never stop, slot cars. You said it, not me, Dave. Dave, let's be clear. They said slot cars. I didn't say slot cars. They tried to suck me into agreeing with them. I don't agree, Dave. I don't think slot cars do not come to mind. What are the snacks that he has? It seems to me that the snacks that are available during the operation sessions seem to be very not adequate.
You're just saying that because there's never cheese balls there.
Well, all I remember is a few cookies.
Well, you got to understand, there's little hands that like to, grab snacks, and some of those little hands have to be monitored a little bit.
There are cookies, there are cupcakes, there are oftentimes peanut butter pretzels, other types of pretzels. Every once in a while, there's fiery hot Doritos.
Yeah, and different types of chips. So there's a variety of snacks.
Cupcakes.
Okay. And where are they? Upstairs or in the train room?
No, in the train room.
Okay.
Over behind the dispatcher.
Oh, okay. So the dispatcher has all the snacks.
He doesn't have a designated snack area.
Yeah, that's key. I think you got to have a designated snack area. I think, Tom, what are you doing about that? Are you going to have a designated snack area on your layout?
That's the one thing I didn't think about yet. I do have a designated alcohol area.
Okay. But you're going to need the best way
One
to have
step.
you got to have snacks with your alcohol.
Since I'm not using under the stairwell for an operator's position, that could perhaps become the snack area with like a small table put there to drop the snacks on. That would work.
Rich, let me ask you this question. After you dip your hand into the big bowl of cheese balls and you're stuffing your face with cheese balls, is it appropriate after that to touch your Rapido trains?
You're a fast track for model railroading fun.
Rapido trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
And the answer is no. And that's why I think every layout owner is going to treat this issue differently, not necessarily because they're either cheap and don't want to provide snacks, but in terms of what they're willing to allow in the environment where, look, nobody's going to run from reaching into the bag of pretzels and then go to the restroom to wash their hands and come back to run the train. That's just not going to happen. And so I think pretzels are, just my opinion, right, are a little bit more, they're a little less greasy. So I think they're more acceptable. And I see bags of pretzels at many operating sessions. Whereas chips, it's like a step beyond in terms of the residue and things like that. So
especially if they have seasonings on them, like Dorito chips have that powder that comes off on your fingers, like cheese balls would.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of some places where there are no snacks until after the session. Everybody, then spends some social time together. And it was a little group that I got to visit with when I was down in North Carolina. These guys round robin at each other's house every week or every other week. The first thing they do when they all get there is sit down and have lunch together. And then they go and work on the layout or operate whatever they're going to do. So, all different types out there. But I personally, I like to see something to munch on if you're going to be somewhere for 4 hours.
Exactly. And the low end of the snack scale would be our very own Chris Wayman, who is slowly starting to build through the help of John Myers, who's basically, somebody that's needs guidance. John Myers is his, what do you call it?
Wisdom keeper?
No,
Sensei?
What's that, Ralph?
I said sensei.
Sure.
Sure.
Anyways, John Myers is trying to help. He's monitoring Chris Wayman's efforts, and because in the early days, Chris's his idea of snacks was a half a bottle of warm water that you shared with everybody else. It was
that's pretty tepid.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Lionel. Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny that you talked about snacks because from the different places where I've been, there's like all kinds of snacks, and then sometimes there's minimal snacks. There's a layout that I operate on near Allentown, PA, and there's different snacks. So a while back, I just started bringing. It's a product from a Philly pretzel factory company called Rivets, and they're like little miniature. It's almost like little soft pretzel, little stubby soft pretzels. And so I'd bring those, and the layout general manager liked them, and everybody likes them, and all kind of good stuff. So they always go. So one of the times I showed up and I didn't have them, and he said, "Hey," he said, "What happened that you didn't? We don't have the rivets there." I said, "Well," I said, "if I stopped to get them," I said, "I knew I would be late," and I said, "I wanted to be on time." And he looked at me and he smiled and he says, "I'll tell you what." He said, "I would rather you be late with the rivets than on time without them." And I said, "Okay." So that's always he and I's joke.
Yeah. And stubby soft pretzel would be the best way to describe my buddy Brad Williamson. He's like a stubby soft pretzel. I found it. John Wilkes, L&N layout. That's who the fella. So the scale goes from John Wilkes L&N layout in Florida at the top of the scale down to Chris Wayman N scale layout near Chattanooga, I believe.
I feel like I should add that to my list of layouts I've operated on.
Really?
Yeah.
You've been to John Wilkes or Chris Wayman's?
John Wilkes. Sounds very familiar because I went to the NMRA convention when it was in, I think it was in Orlando one year.
Right.
And I did some operating sessions there.
It's a beautiful, beautiful layout. It's a pleasure to be there, and the snacks are tremendous. And Tom Wilson is the fellow that organizes some operating sessions for the Cocoa Beach RPM. That's what it is. There we go.
Virginia Southwestern?
It could be. You have a better mind for facts than I do. The only thing I can remember is that if I was going to buy one particular model railroad product, it would be from Rapido Trains.
Your fast track for model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
That's it. We're done, boys. We're exhausted. So, what is going to be the emphasis of the next great model railroads we've operated on podcast? What is the consensus of the emphasis?
Don't all speak at once.
There you go.
I was letting everybody else go first.
Oh, me too.
Oh, I was on mute.
Well, when you buy a copy of Great Model Railroads, what do you expect to see in it?
Great model railroads.
Picture.
If you're going to listen to a podcast about great model railroads you operated on, what would you want to hear about?
Probably not snacks.
Great model railroads.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, and what as an operator in your mind made it a great model railroad?
There you go.
And what was your favorite thing about it?
Exactly.
Yep.
So everybody remember that when you listen to this, and also we'll try to figure out how to make an organized list. And what's wrong with talking about snacks? Rich?
In general, there's nothing wrong with it. But in terms of great model railroads, to me, that would be pretty far down on the list.
Well, that's
if you had your choice of listening to two podcasts, and one was great model railroads I operated on, or great snacks I ate at model railroads I operated on, which one would you want to listen to?
It wouldn't be the second one.
If the discussion was dry on the first one, but lively on the second one, I'd take the second one all day long.
Yeah.
But because audio podcasts are as much about entertaining the listener as they are about spewing out facts. Facts are
true.
One of my favorite things to say about the difference. I was always a freelance prototype. I'd say I was a proto-freelance model railroad. I would never in a million years model a prototype. Never. It would never happen. Never, ever happen. Because here's the way I always looked at it. Think of your favorite movies, the favorite 3 movies that you've ever watched in your life. Could be Back to the Future, whatever your favorite 3 movies are that you've watched in your life. 5 movies, whatever it is.
Now, that would be an interesting podcast.
the 80% of them, 80% of the answers are going to be about fictional stories. And somehow the whole model railroading world turned on, it has to be prototype. And for me, I like I just couldn't handle modeling the prototype. I love the fiction. I love creating. So as far as which podcasts I'd listen to, I would listen to the one that was the most entertaining. And more than likely, an off-the-wall subject about your favorite snacks at model railroads would probably be more entertaining. However, we're going to leave it up to you four guys to create an entertaining podcast about just the operating on the model railroads. And if I have to ask all the questions, it won't be that entertaining. There you go. See? This not only is this podcast informative, it's entertaining.
Sounds like a line has been drawn in the sand, gentlemen.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Yep. It's a fun.
He threw down the gauntlet.
Yeah,
that's right.
Speaking of lines, if somebody wanted to drop us a line, would you like me to give out the email address?
Sure, if you'd like to.
Happy to. If you'd like to communicate with a Modeler's Life podcast via email, you can send an email to modelerslife@gmail.com. That's modelers with one L, like Midland, not two L's, like Allegheny.
Nice. That's nice. That's
smooth.
Yeah, that's very smooth. And if you missed that email address, if you go to our website, amodelerslife.com, and scroll down the website just a little tiny bit, you'll see a picture of the moderately agitated mailboy in a particularly agitated state. And you can just click on that picture, and boom, the address is right there for you. And all you got to do is fill in your text. Doug, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Have you ever wanted a T-shirt with a hot dog on it?
I can't think that I have.
No, I wouldn't imagine you would.
So I would take one as long as the T-shirt was mustard yellow.
There you go.
Like Hot Dog Johnny's.
I was going to say, mine would say Hot Dog Johnny's on it, yes.
Yeah.
And it's mustard yellow.
Yeah, well, actually, I wasn't asking you guys, so it really doesn't matter.
I thought we were supposed to take our own initiative here.
That's true.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
I think we were actually almost entertaining there. So
yeah, there you go. This was a good podcast. Once I got you guys rolling, it was a pretty good podcast. It's just I went to make a list of what layouts we should talk about, and so people know what happens behind the scenes and the way this podcast is done. In plenty of time before the podcast started, I'd say 2 or 3 minutes, I opened up the emails, and here was these gigantic lists of layouts, and I'm like, well, how am I ever going to make sense of this? And it's great that there's so many layouts to talk about. I can't wait to get you guys, because again, I don't think you guys are really aware of the fact that most people haven't had the opportunity that you guys have had. Not only have you had the opportunity to operate on a lot of great layouts, but you've had the opportunity to interact with people all across the country, and most of people in the hobby don't have that opportunity. When I say most, I would say 90% of the population of the hobby.
I don't think that's inaccurate. There's a certain amount of financial means that you have to have a minimum of in order to be able to travel like that, to go to these operating events. There's a lot of costs involved. Travel, hotels, eating out like that. It adds up. And certainly, I don't think the majority of modelers are going to fly across the country to go to an operating session at La Mesa.
Well, but I would say, too, the majority of modelers aren't interested in operations, right? Operations is a small part of the model railroading hobby to begin with.
Absolutely.
And see, that would be a great. That's where we'll leave this discussion, because I completely disagree with you, Rich. I think the majority of people are interested in model railroad operations, but it's been portrayed in the model railroad press over the last couple of decades that it's very difficult and it has to be done correctly, or you'll be marched out to the end of the pier and asked to take another step. So I absolutely take the opposite view. I think most people, when exposed to the experience I had with my own personal model railroad, was anybody that hadn't had the opportunity to do model railroad operations, once they were exposed to it, 90% of the people were like, I can't get enough of this.
Well, they realize it's fun.
Well, sure, but they have to have the opportunity to be exposed to it.
It's geographic location.
No, it's not.
Well,
It's not. It's about who gets invited and who doesn't.
If you live in Jupiter, like you say, and you're 300, 400 miles away from the next guy that you're aware of, it's hard to manage going to operating sessions.
Exactly.
That's got nothing to do with it, because we'll go back to our friend Mike Hauk, who's a great fan of the AML Nation. He has a beautiful layout. I would love to have an AML Nation operating session at his layout. He has but 4 or 5 operators. How do I decide who gets to go and who doesn't?
You leave out, 99.99% of the people.
Exactly. So do I post pictures of how much fun I'm having at the party you're not invited to?
It's not that they're not invited, though. They could go any other time. There's 365 days in a year. I mean, I'm not saying that, every day Mike needs to host 5 different people, but...
So is he near any other layouts? So what you do is you coordinate an event where you have all of the layouts in that area participate in that event, and you do it over a couple of days, and you say, hey, look, here's a long weekend. Friday, you pick this layout and that layout. Saturday, you do another layout, and Sunday's a short layout, a smaller one, and then you head home.
Oh, I know how it works, Tom. But unfortunately, even in that scenario, you might be able to accommodate 30, 40, 50 people.
And how many do you think you'll get expressing interest in coming to it?
Mm-hmm. Key question.
Of the 2,700 people that are fans of the AML network? 2,000.
Do you think, how many came to Tomstock?
70.
Now you're talking.
What's the...
Well, you had 70 out of how many thousand that actually came to it? So you end up with a finite number of people who have the ability and means to make the commitment to travel to that type of an event. They may want to be there. They may express frustration about not being able to go. But the bottom line is they don't go because of whatever reason. They can't take off of work. They don't have the ability to travel. They have commitments at home. They own a farm and they have to feed the horse. I don't know. But you end up with a small amount of people that actually sign up and go to attend those type of things too. Compared to your audience, your listening audience that you have in AML Nation.
Mm-hmm. And I'll add something. Didn't mean to step on there, but excuse me. I'll add something too. I think that we, and I'm not speaking for the other 3 gentlemen, but as a team of operators, and I've operated with all of these gentlemen on a number of different layouts for a number of years. We do realize how fortunate we are to be able to do what we do, where we're able to do that on a regular basis. And I know that the other 3 gentlemen, and I know that I appreciate this very much and don't ever take it for granted. So I just want to put that out there, that when you listen to Rich, Tom, Ralph, and myself talk about our experiences, if people hear us, but Lionel, you know the difference because you're a communicator. There's a difference in hearing somebody and listening to what they're saying. So if people really listen to what we're saying, the takeaway should be, wow, these guys really are having a good time. They appreciate where they're able to go on a regular basis, and they appreciate one another. And I'll end my comments with that.
I didn't even add in, oh my God, I can't believe how forgiving my wife is of my hobby interest. And, how many operating sessions I would love to go to, but I really limit myself because there's a balance that you have to maintain between your enjoyment of the hobby and trying to maintain happiness in your marriage too, because my wife does like to spend time with me sometimes. And if I'm at an operating session every weekend and she works Monday to Friday, and on Sunday she's helping out at the barn with the horse and taking care of the barn. So she essentially gets 1 free day a week with me. And if I'm at an operating session every week on Saturday, that's not going to go over very big.
Doug, I would reply to your comments as that's exactly why I have you guys on here, though, is to relay your experiences so that other people who listen to the podcast might say, hey, maybe I got to get a little bit more involved, or maybe I got to try it a bit more. That's exactly why I want to do this, is to explain to people and have people understand how much enjoyment you can get from model railroad operations and making the effort.
Cool.
That's the whole point of the exercise, is to explain to people what model railroad operations is and how enjoyable it is.
Well, you build these models because you love trains and you want to build this little scale model of it that you created. And well, now you can actually do something with it. You can see it perform and come to life in its environment that would be the scale environment. Now you're modeling the whole world that the train ran in. And to me, that's just fascinating to be able to have this thing be animated and be able to use it in this gaming process. But yet, a good friend of ours, Scott Lupia, I think you've had him on the show, right? Fantastic, like amazing modeler, one of the best modelers I know, like insanely talented guy. And he does it in N scale too. It's crazy. Could care less about operations. I got him an invitation to come up to Tony's house. I'm like, you really got to come see Tony Custer's house. Like, that'd be really cool. I had told him I was an operator there. And so I bring him up and he's like, wow, that was really, really cool. I love seeing that layout. I go, do you want to come back for another session? He's like, operations aren't my thing.
Right. Well, sure. There's a few people there in everything. There's, there's people that, don't want to do something.
In my mind, I'm going, it didn't make any sense that you wouldn't want to just enjoy this again, and just, he loves the modeling, but not the operations at all.
Well, for sure. And there's all kinds of people, and there's all different levels of people that enjoy the hobby in different ways, for sure. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. There's no argument about that. But I wonder
what percentage it is that just likes the modeling aspect of it, because there's modelers that just build dioramas and don't ever look to operate anything. And I wonder what the percentage is of people who not only actively operate, but would operate if they had opportunities to.
I think it would be pretty high. My experience has been that most people that are exposed to it can't get enough of it. Most people. That's my own personal experience. Was somebody going to say something?
I was going to say, let's hopefully this reaches out to them and they can get inspired to. It's got to be an active action on their part to put themselves in a position to be able to participate.
Partly.
They're not going to. You can't sit back and expect to get invited.
But never before. Like, how long has OperatingSessions.com been going? 5 years, maybe 5 years. The hobby's closing in on 100 years old. It's only been in the last 5 years that you could go on this machine and type in OperatingSessions.com and find out that there's all kinds of places, there's all kinds of layouts you can go operate on. That's not been a common thread in the past. That's new to the world.
What a fantastic tool.
Absolutely. And part of that is, let's get 4 guys that I know really well or pretty well. Still trying to learn, still trying to get to know Ralph. That's a full-time job.
Nobody knows Ralph. Not even Ralph knows Ralph.
Ralph's in it. He's the enigma.
And let's get 4 guys that I know pretty well that have had the opportunity to operate on hundreds of layouts and have them tell stories and talk about what they like and don't like, and let people try to be inspired that way as well. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to inspire people to enjoy operations even more, or to find out and check out different avenues of the hobby. These podcasts are the glue that holds them together is model railroading. But at the end of the day, they're entertainment. You're not going to turn it on and listen to it if it's monotone and boring. And, so how do you ballast track? Like, you can only talk about how to ballast track so many times. Now, one of the criticisms I've heard about this particular podcast is that a lot of them people will say, well, then my podcast would only be strictly model railroading. Well, great. And when you wake up from your nap, let me know. Because you go to any model railroad club on the planet, and you're there for a night or an operating session, or any operating session you go to. Like you said earlier, one of the best parts is the social aspect of model railroading. That's one of the pluses of this hobby, is the social aspect of it. The people I've met from this podcast, the best part of my life, my best part of my model railroading life has been the last 10 years and all the great people I've met. And like I often say, the beauty of this podcast is I can call up Uncle Dave and say, hey, let's do a podcast. Well, you don't call people up and say, let's talk for 90 minutes on the phone. But when you are able to add, let's do a podcast to it, then people are like, yeah, let's get on a podcast and discuss stuff, because other people are listening to it. They're being exposed to the hobby. We could go on for hours about this. I have very definite views.
Well, and that's what we're going to do with the next, podcast in this series. Is we're going to expose people to different model layouts and
exactly. We're going to expose people to your experiences of over the last few decades of being able to operate on all sorts of great layouts and the opportunities you guys have had, because I want to do exactly what it is you described, Doug. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to bring your experiences to life for people to enjoy and perhaps be inspired by them. Maybe not Ralph's, but.
Well, I was going to say, geez, wow.
You don't want Ralph exposing himself too much.
Well, this is true. I was going to say, if out of all this we get one person to get involved, come out of their shell, whether it's their own personal shell or the shell that they're in because they live in, I'm going to just go with Saskatchewan.
You can only push the fence sitters. The people who are already into operations, that you don't need to talk to them. The people who are never going to do operations, no matter how much you talk to them, you're not going to reach them. You're wasting your time. It's the fence sitters. It's the people who they have a desire to do it. They don't know how to reach out to anybody. They don't have the network established. They have apprehensions about operations. And I think highlighting how welcoming everybody is would be an important part to this. And it's building the network to put yourself in a position to become invited. And the way you do that is you get to know people. And, whether it's through a friend of a friend, but if you're starting out from zero, Abe Belize was starting out from zero. He didn't know anybody around him that was into model railroads. And he was surrounded by them. He just didn't know it until Rich introduced him to Jerry.
Well, for sure.
And we'll lead a horse to water.
And what year was that, Rich?
Good question.
8 years ago,
know.
Rich?
It's got to be close to 10 years now.
Yeah.
Are some of my questions not so good, Rich?
Some of them have been repetitive.
The one about what are the cheese balls? That one's not so good.
Yeah, just this obsession. It's not a healthy obsession.
Is your name Rich?
It starts with an R.
I don't believe I was speaking to you, Tom. I really don't.
I'm sorry. I thought we were supposed to have initiative here.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, Doug. Come on.
Yeah, Doug. Yeah, come on, Doug.
Yep.
For crying out loud, buddy.
I would say it's closer to 10 years in that ballpark.
Must have been right around when I started the podcast, 2014.
I would say around then, yeah.
And that's why I started the podcast, to get Uncle Dave involved. All right.
I'll tell you what, I think that's been a good synergistic relationship for you guys. Because he really benefits from being on the podcast, and I think your podcast benefits from having him on it.
I would agree.
It really works for both of you.
I would agree with both statements, but his life has been far more enriched by meeting me. There's no doubt about it.
And he's so modest.
Yeah, exactly. So, Doug, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Have you ever wanted to have a T-shirt with a hot dog on it?
This sounds like deja vu all over again.
I got you, babe.
Would it kill you to just would it kill you to just say yes? Do you have to think it through?
Lionel. Sure, Lionel.
Well, if you go to Midwest Model Railroad and their URL is midwestmodelrr.com, and they're in Independence, Missouri. And you go to that website, MidwestModelRR.com, and you scroll across the navigation bar to Other, and hit the drop-down menu. Right there, you'll see AML Shop. And you click on that link, and boom, you're in a wonderland of AML merchandise. Hats, hoodies, mugs, T-shirts. And in there, you will find a T-shirt with a hot dog on it.
Cool.
You want me
Just
to...
make sure you go to the website and look for that, and don't drive to Independence, Missouri, and go to the store and look for it, because they don't have those T-shirts there.
Nope.
That's true.
It's a really long drive to not find a T-shirt.
Isn't that where Harry S. Truman is from?
Yeah, that's where his library is, yeah.
Ah, see?
Let's see, what else do we got to do? Usually Bruce the mailboy's here, and he helps me with it. Oh, yeah. And if you love this podcast, and who wouldn't, especially the last half, it was much more interesting than the first half. But the whole thing, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving it a solid 7.5 to 8. It's a very, very worthwhile listen. If you like this podcast and you like twice as much podcasting a week, for just a few cents a day, if you go to our Patreon link and click on the Patreon link, for just a few cents a day, you can have two podcasts a week. And then for just another more few cents a day, if you'd like to move up a tier, you can be entered into the new game that's sweeping the nation. When will I get my T-shirt? It's a new online game that's absolutely sweeping the nation, because everybody who signs up to the second tier gets a free T-shirt every year and a bag of swag. And I think it would be a great idea to add to that is, what did you call that book? The time book?
The Railroad Time Book.
Railroad Time Book. You got to send me a couple of photos of that book so that I can. I'm going to look at that. Maybe I can make something like that.
There's one for sale on Abe Books.
That's not what I said.
Oh, yeah. You wanted me to send it to you?
No, I said send me a couple of photos. Just a couple.
Send you a couple photos
of the book. Just give me a rough idea what it looks like, and size and what have you, and I'll go from there.
I think I can do that part.
All right, there you go. I think that's it. I think we're done. Rich, do you think that we can take the chance? Actually, I think this is just going to be a regular. I don't think this is an episode. I don't think it has been an episode. It certainly feels like I've had an episode.
Wow. He stole my line, actually.
There you go. Hey, Ralph, do you have any way of recording these podcasts to keep them permanently on your phone and that?
Why would I do that?
It might be the last one you're ever on.
Excellent.
Rich, I'm thinking you should take us out of here.
I am ready to do so.
All right. So remember, A Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
OPSIG members.
A Modeler's Life is sponsored by Because I Love Sushi. You could love any old sushi, but would it love you back?
It's another Lincoln Homer.
Who are looking forward to their next operating session.
Okay.
Did you have fun, Ralph?
Always.
Attaboy. What about you, Doug? I'm not sure. Did you have fun?
Absolutely.
It's actually a pretty good discussion. It's a good discussion. Now I'm getting all kinds of messages. I'm getting messages from. Look at that. How big would that be?
Oh, you want a ruler next to it?
Sure. Put a ruler next to it.
Yeah, you wanted pictures, Lionel. You're going to get pictures. You may get pictures you don't want to see.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? I just thought, I bet you it wouldn't be that hard to make this and be something I could send out with my bag of swag.